Hey everybody, welcome to Distorted. Tonight I am joined again by my wife, Dr. Sonja Sollenberger.
Hello.
And we decided that we wanted to talk about today. It's a current topic that's out there, and there was some recent video that came out where one of the influencers' filter turned off halfway through one of her videos, and it showed her completely different than what she actually looks like. And so I guess supposedly she lost over 100,000 viewers because it wasn't what they kept seeing on the image anymore. And I just wanted to bring that up. I don't really care too much about talking about that. But it's this idea of this mask that seems to be more pervasive now. It used to be something that, you saw it on television, but with social media, it's everywhere now. And I want to come from the perspective of just how deep that distortion runs and the negative effect it has, not just on the person who sees it, but the person who's promoting it. It just hurts in general. It hurts the interpersonal dynamic because it's a false front. It's presenting in a way that's not authentic to who you are. And we're not talking about the idea component. We're talking about the actual physical presentation. And we're going to speak to that, why it's unhealthy and why that distortion causes people to actually go through emotional pain when it's uncovered that the way you're presenting isn't what you actually look like. And so I'll start us off by just saying this. I've noticed that the performance part of the mask serves as a protection almost, right? Like a fake boundary, so that if I change my appearance, and I'm going to use the example of makeup because that's the one that was originally in my head before all the video filtering things, right? Because I didn't know about that stuff. That wasn't a part of my growing up, right? There wasn't video filters. So this idea that you put the makeup on, it came to prominence some years ago with reality TV and stuff, with people that were promoting themselves to look a certain way. Obviously, it's always existed with, like, say, models and stuff, and it's existed in the magazine world because they would airbrush everything, right?
Right.
And you see a picture of a photo, somebody on a cover of a magazine, knowing full well that they had a mole or some blemish, and all of a sudden you see them on a magazine and there's nothing, it's gone. And as everybody knows, gosh, we've got all kinds of blemishes. We've got freckles and moles and zits and, and indents and discoloring and all this other stuff that we just have as a normal feature. And when you see somebody who's immaculate, it's not real. But there's a mechanism in the brain that when you see it enough times, it tricks the brain into perceiving that that's an actual thing. And I can tell you from what AI is doing that it's creating imagery without the imperfection that we all have. Right. And it's presenting a false, the women are all, again, symmetrically immaculate. Their eyes are bigger than they are. The men all have chiseled the chin. They all look like Jack Reacher, right? Not the Tom Cruise version, the guy from the TV series. But everybody's like this appearance that is a very small percentage of the population, but now expanded to make it look like a lot of people look this way. And I find that to be the tipping point of this whole topic, that the mask, if you will, can be quite beautiful, but it's not a representation of the actual person.
Right.
And that's not to say that the actual person wouldn't be pretty on their own, but you're not being given that presentation.
So it's a distortion.
It's a distortion. So this piece that I throw it out to you is, let's talk about the effect that it has on the way we perceive other people. Maybe let's start there. What do you think?
But it's an acceptable distortion.
Yeah.
And it's coveted, and everyday folk just try to reach that flawless appearance.
Right.
Even though that's not how we look.
It's not even how they look.
And it causes a lot of issues when the mask is removed and they're not that person. It causes a lot of internal conflict and internal distress because they don't look like that all the time.
Yeah. So let's start with the self-esteem component.
Okay.
I don't look like this all the time, but I'm going to put out a presentation that I do look like this, and inevitably that mask has to fall. If I'm going to develop a relationship with somebody to create intimacy with that person, they're eventually going to see me without the mask, and then what do? That's kind of like the starting point. What am I going to do now? I can't always have the mask.
No.
So what I think happens is that you then push people away from that intimacy because then I don't have to worry about it. If I can continue to present through my mask and you like my mask, that's where our relationship's going to stay.
And it stays surface.
Yep. And it's not going to develop past that. So if we are to meet in person, take away the video screen, if we're going to meet in person, I'm going to be made up to the best of my ability, and that's the only way you're going to see me.
Right.
I'm only going to interact with you if I have my mask on. You're only going to see me this way. So it's like going out to dinner or something like that. But you're not going to see me, and that's going to put a restriction on how we can develop as in a relationship. It's going to, it puts the halt on it.
Yes. I think the thing I keep thinking of, though, is it causes issues interpersonally, but also within the person, because they're going to that much effort to try to disguise themselves, and then that acceptance piece isn't there.
Right.
And they're constantly searching for that acceptance.
So tell them again, introspective. Tell them that again, just so.
Well, interpersonal is between people, and then intrapersonal is within the individual person. So you have both, and you need both in any relationship.
So you're not only distorting the way that works in between the two people, but the distortion is happening internally. And again, I think that that's powerful because the way that you're presenting, not only is it affecting how other people see you, but it's affecting how you perceive yourself. That's problematic. You're not able to be authentic with yourself at that point. I think and then the pain that comes from revealing that, and then what if you're not accepted? Once you reveal the rest of it and you don't get accepted, I don't know, I throw it out there that the person might actually try to hide even more, instead of maybe having that be the thing that actually allows them to be open to themselves. They actually use it as a weapon and they internalize even more. Do you think that's...
Yes, and we won't go down this rabbit hole, but catfishing, right? That's how that started. Because people didn't want to face who they really were.
Right.
Which that was a complete distortion.
Yeah.
And then that show, they had a relationship that was built on a lie.
Correct.
And then they met in person at the end. And usually the person that was lied to gets really upset and angry and never wants to talk to the person again.
Yeah, I think the only time it ever worked out is when it was actually the person. And the reason they were lying is because they had emotional damage and they thought, well, we can work through that. But every time it was not the person who they said it was, even if you would say, what's the right way of saying this? Even if you could say objectively the person was healthy looking or normal looking, it didn't matter because the lie had already been presented. Right. And so, yeah, that's a great example. I mean, we watched that show when it first came on and we would laugh at this isn't going to work out well. And you know, again, to be fair, it was always typically somebody that had some mental health problems.
And I was just going to, they always had mental health.
They always did.
Issues.
Yeah.
As we all do.
Yeah.
But they were magnified because the appearance was the conduit for their mental health
That's
distress.
the right word. It was magnified by that problem. And if they had a body dysmorphic type of thing or a body image, a self-esteem issue, a depression, anxiety, any one of these things, it was magnified. That's the perfect word for it. So whatever they would have had, like Sonja said, we all have something. It got taken out of proportion because they were living their life through that falsehood.
Right.
And so, you know, I think when you look at the distortions, the way that I've approached them in the past, the first challenging question is what I'm thinking based on fact. Well, you know, that's a hard one to overcome when the person is presenting in a false way. And then again, the outside thing is sort of easy for people to understand that if you've been told that someone is this person and that's what you're then designing your attraction to, and then they pull the rug out and they're not even close, that would cause you some damage to try to overcome. You could say, well, the personality, you liked talking to me. Yeah, the problem is that it's when we interact, it's on all levels. It's physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual. So it's not one-dimensional.
Right.
And and then we talk about the internal stuff, the intra stuff. The person who is false presenting is changing the way that they see themselves. It's not healthy to not embrace your imperfection as lovely, as beautifully made. Because what you're doing then is you're attacking yourself. How can you present something confidently if you don't even believe in presenting it.
Which there's also a conflict and contradiction in the culture because we're all about body positivity.
Yeah.
And body, different shapes and sizes and colors and freckles and,
Right.
Scars, but
Not really.
not really. We don't really believe that, or we wouldn't have billion-dollar industry selling concealer and things to correct. That they call it a corrector for that reason.
And every filter under the sun for video. The shading, the coloring, the size, the dimension, everything. It's ridiculous. Everything. I promise you that what you see on film right now is me. He in all my glory, right? All kinds of filters on every level to present in a way that's inauthentic. I have to be honest, I wouldn't even know what to do. I'm so glad I'm not from the current generation when it comes to this part of their lives.
Right.
To go online to date and have absolutely no guarantee that anybody you're talking to is anywhere near what they are. What a shame that is, and what a devastation it does to people. I'm a big proponent of courtship and of meeting somebody live and in person, to actually meet that person and engage with that person, right? And I think, again, I go back to this mask idea. It's been promoted so much now. You see the person and you think they're beautiful. They're not. No. What you think is beautiful is that they're really good with makeup. Or more importantly, the person that put it on them is really good with it. A professional human being who does it for a living put makeup on them.
Glam squad.
Glam squad, whatever you want to call it. Put makeup on them to make them look attractive to the eye. It has got nothing to do with what they actually look like. So much makeup, you can't even see their skin anymore.
No. And sometimes when I watch TV, you'll get up close.
Yes.
And he'll tell me, Sonja, can you see all the baked on makeup? And I'm like, no, I can't.
High definition has been a horrible thing for most people. Yeah. And if you get up close and you look and you're like, oh my gosh, you can see it. Like you can see it. And I feel bad. And I feel bad for the deception. But also that, again, I want to go back to this point so it's not missed. Your brain is powerful, and it starts to reinterpret what you think is beautiful.
Yes, for sure.
It starts to reinterpret what you think is appropriate. And you're looking at people so often that are not real, you start to think that that's real.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that's
I'm trying to think of a good parallel to that, but it's like convincing yourself that you actually like the flavor of something because you keep eating it.
Right.
And eventually you get like tongue blind to it,
Can I go an example of when we were thinking about this mask idea? That movie Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
With Julia Roberts. There's a scene in the movie where he takes her to a polo match and she's all dressed up. She does the famous hoo-hoo-hoo thing.
Yeah.
And his sleazy friend comes up to her and tries to be rude to her. She later tells Richard Gere's character, hey, why didn't you let me stay dressed up as a sex worker if this guy was going to come up, because then I know how to handle it.
Right.
But this idea of the mask as protection and as a defense and not being prepared to handle other situations, right? Because that's the front.
Even though it was perceived as the negative, she had the character had confidence in what they were as opposed to what they were being created to be through the mask. That's a great example. The mask wasn't something that the character could reinforce and actually have attribute of because it wasn't who she was. Whereas if by herself, left alone to her own devices, she knows how to handle that. It's so brilliant because I think that's a huge part of this is if you're hurting yourself ultimately. If you are hiding behind a presentation, you're not really connected to the innocence of just the pure nature of what we look like and the beauty that comes from that. And it is quite, like I said, it's quite sad. It does speak to the sadness of the imagery, the way we present, the falsehood behind trying to create a fake facade that is beautiful in an objective way, if that makes sense. Like you can make something look nice, but it doesn't necessarily present what's internal.
Right.
You know, once the original paint is gone off a car, yes, certainly you can repaint it, you can refurbish it, but there's nothing like the actual original of what it was.
And don't you think that if we're working that hard to present a presentation, but it's a false presentation, then there's other falsehoods underneath.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's deep.
Yeah.
Like it's a deep issue.
Yeah.
Because it's not just surface. It goes really deep. And it's for all of us.
Yeah.
We all wear a mask.
Yes, and I think, like I said, we all wear a mask, and we're focusing in on the presentation mask. But here's another thing you said earlier too, the idea of acceptance, but it's not really accurate to what people actually believe, because again, you watch some of these shows where it's like a dating show where it's false presentation. Well, wait a minute, if you're proud of yourself, why are you false presenting? You have a different identity, a different way of seeing yourself, a different way of carrying yourself. So present it. The problem is they know, everyone knows, you're never 100% accepted. I don't care who you are. You're never 100% accepted. You can't please everybody. And so the truth usually is the best functioning, like you talked about the Julia Roberts character. The authenticity of how you present, even if it's viewed as a negative, is still better for you than a fake presentation. There's always going to be somebody who's going to not like you. There's always going to be somebody who's going to judge you. So if you think you're different in some certain way, go be different in that certain way. I mean, it's you're better off being who you are and having that be rejected, which I think is why people avoid it.
Well, it's a control issue,
Yes.
right? And we're afraid of that control. And when we talk about control, there's the intrinsic control and the extrinsic. So we're trying to control the extrinsic, what we present, but internally we're having all of this lack of control for ourselves.
Yeah.
And don't you think this started way back, humankind, when Adam and Eve were in the garden and they had no concept of, they were pure and had this purity.
Yeah.
And then once that deception was introduced, that distortion, the fig leaves, right, were the first mask.
They really were. And so let's dig into that a little bit. The idea of the knowledge that they gained in that moment, it supersedes just the physical. The acceptance of vulnerability, again, I'll tie it into this where if you reject my mask, you're not really rejecting me. At least that's what I've seen in therapy. You're not rejecting me, you're rejecting my false presentation, so I tell myself it doesn't hurt as much. So I can fake you through something, you reject the fake, oh well, I'm okay, because you didn't really reject me. You take it to what happened in the garden, it's this idea of you got the good and evil knowledge came really fast, really quick. And so a couple of things happened at the same time. The acknowledgement of vulnerability that they had for themselves, the the introspective, because the other person, Adam to Eve and Eve to Adam, was expressing the same vulnerability. They both were covered at the same time in the same vicinity of their body, the most vulnerable part of their body. So it was an instantaneous awareness of not only am I vulnerable, but so is the other. Not only did you now know you were vulnerable and you could accept that the other person was vulnerable, but you also recognized that you could be hurt by that vulnerability. Otherwise, why would there be acknowledgement on both people's positioning? So not only have I become vulnerable to you, but you can hurt me with it. And if you can hurt me with it, I can hurt you with it. That's just the beginnings of how much knowledge was dumped into their heads prematurely. And God knew they weren't ready and didn't want that to happen. They were deceived by the enemy to accept knowledge that they weren't prepared to handle. And it changed the whole thing after that. Obviously, we're not going to do that today. That's not our storyline today. But this piece is vulnerability, exposure to another person's vulnerability, exposure to the harm that comes with it. And I would go back to this because I think this is super important. If I present myself in a false way and you reject that, you haven't rejected me. At least that's the lie I can tell myself. Well, they don't have to reject you guys because you already did it yourself.
Right. And along with that, I've had clients, and I'm sure you have too, who, because they were sexually assaulted, they gain a lot of weight.
Right.
And that ties into what you're saying, because they're not, what's the word? They're not accepting the person or the weight. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's a protection.
It's a protection. It's a mask. It's a defense.
It's not going to happen again because you're not going to see me.
You're protected.
Yeah, I'm protected. You're not going to look at me the same way. I don't find myself attractive. I don't want you to find me attractive, because part of the connection for some people, even though we know it's a power dynamic, is to be like, well, if you'll leave me alone if it's not, and I think it's important to understand that.
That's
go ahead.
No, you're right.
So if I don't have to actually put myself out there, if I can ghost you when I'm uncomfortable, if I can stop the communication because it's only on text or whatever, it really is unhealthy on a macro level. It's unhealthy for us. We're losing our advantages of being human beings, of going out and meeting people, of risking that, of enjoying the risk, enjoying the fun that comes from that, along with the potential for it doesn't always work out. But boy, we're losing that. And I talked about it on the previous podcast about the dating. That we're losing this capacity to reach out to one another and be accepting of one another, and that comes with a concept you can't eliminate, which is, if I'm really me, then someone could say no to me. But guys, I'm telling you right now, if you're just presenting through a false presentation, you've already been rejected. It's already over.
Self-rejection.
Yeah. It's already over. You've stopped it before it started. And I think that's the thing that really is even more damaging. The distortion of the lie of presentation is harming us as a whole society. I mean, think about, I remember back in the day going to school and I tried to risk it by, I took a women's studies class, right? And when the class started, there was one other fella in the class. And about 4 weeks in, he was eliminated. He was told to leave. And then it was just me. And I didn't feel like I represented all men, but at the same time, I would try to express that, I think one day I brought in a bunch of pamphlets that I found on campus, and all the pamphlets were presenting females in a very subjective, not a very healthy light. And my part of it was to say, this piece is demeaning in that it's trying to put you in a category that may or may not represent what you actually are as women. And this was years ago.
You're going to get it.
Well, I did get it. I did. I got in trouble, right? But now you got women doing that all on their own. And I thought, how ironic. Because this was many years ago that I went through that class. But now it's like, how ironic. They're doing it to themselves.
Yeah.
And they think it's empowering because it brings attention and it, you get a click or a like or whatever. But what are you selling?
It's self-reinforcing.
But that's just the whole, but isn't that, that's the conundrum. You're reinforcing a fake self. It's not you. It's not you. You're not representing who you are. And if you want to take it deeper and go somewhere, you've got nothing.
But don't you think that comes from pain?
Of course.
For instance, myself, when I used to have migraines every day, I would wear button-down pants, long sleeve socks, socks, so no part of my body was showing, and it was a protection because I was in physical pain.
Certainly.
And I wanted to feel protected because I felt raw.
Yeah.
So that pain is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I shouldn't self-disclose too much, but I've hid behind my weight for many years, right? Like I find that having been in shape as a younger man and not wanting to compete in a way that I didn't think I could be successful, then I stopped. I stopped trying to compete in that way. And I do think that there's a both, you had already brought off both parts of this. It's the way I present to try to be more than I am, because I was always somewhat small, as 5'6" is not a tall guy, to compensate for size, to try to be bigger than I was. And I did it in an unhealthy way to convince myself that I could hold my ground, even though I really wasn't. It really wasn't me. And then the fight, the battle that I had over myself to try to say, well, wait a minute, what does God say that I am? And am I enough in that presentation without having to compete? There's nothing else to add to it. And so the pain can come from physical pain, like you said, but it can also come from emotional pain, spiritual pain, intellectual pain. I guess the bottom line is, as we wrap this up, is that there's a distortion of presentation that is costing two levels. It's costing us on the extrinsic, because we're not really being seen. And we're being accepted for something that's not really us. And then the internal, which is intrinsic, and I'm fighting with my own idea of who I am. And you've pointed out also the ironic nature of this whole idea of everybody's okay the way they are, and you're not living that. You're lying. And it's really kind of ironic that I see it more authentically in faith, because I see people interacting in person more. That's not to say that they don't use social media too. It's to say that I see more interaction. I see more interaction on a personal level, which is opening them up to risk that they're not as good at as we were in our generation, because they don't do it as much. The reps aren't there. There's not as much repetition on it, if that makes sense.
But I think I just think it's disguising the pain.
Yeah.
But we all wear a mask, even you and I.
Yep.
And it's just maybe not to that extent. It's a lesser one, but it's covering up the pain.
Yeah. And so, okay, let me close with this then, because you made me think of something else. So the idea of closing up the pain, and here's the thing. Understand that what's happening in the brain is adding to this distortion. You're already struggling with something, and now we're convincing ourselves that there's an appearance that can be obtained that's not realistic and not healthy. And when you fail to reach it, you get damaged even more. So what it does is it doubles down on the pain, is what I want to say. And
I know we have to wrap up, but that show Botched, I mean, that's the perfect example. Is these men and women go on and they get so obsessed, and they spend hundreds of thousands, but they get so obsessed with the perfect nose and taking a rib out. And the Brazilian.
That's the extreme version of this.
That's the extreme, but it's again magnified because you see it in the episode, and it's not okay just to tweak one thing. Then they get multiple. Yeah, when every magazine or whenever video you see is a fake presentation of a person. All right. Well, like I said, we could go on forever, but I think we got the point across. This is something to think about. Something to look at yourself if you're caught up in this type of world that you're not really influencing anybody, because it's not really you. So just throwing that out there. Your fake persona's influencing people. I don't know if you like that or not, but that's great. So just throw that out there. And thanks for joining us. See you next time. Oh, yeah, we do that. Till next time. Thanks for joining us on Distorted. Follow us however you can, but primarily we're on YouTube, Rumble, Apple Pod, and Spotify. Add a comment, share it with your friends. We appreciate you.